Hi, everybody. This is
Hello.
David Sereda from davidsereda.co. And today we're talking about the frequencies that I have in my frequency library. So we've already talked about the difference between quality and non-quality post-electromagnetic field devices. And the three phases of PMF devices are the quality of the frequency, the quality of the power source, the amplifier, and the quality of the emitter that emits the frequencies into the body and the field. And because our magnetic field of our heart has been measured 60 times stronger than the brain, thanks to the experiments done by HeartMath and Dartmouth College, that we know that any electrical system has a magnetic field. Any electrical system, as our nervous systems are, that move energy, that have resistance, has an energy field. And energy fields can cross and share vibrational information with each other. So therefore, we can put a magnetic field around the body, and the body can sense it and feel it and partake of it. So quality pulse electromagnetic field devices are, it's there. Again, I pointed out there's a lot of them that use very poor quality amplifiers, very poor quality frequency sources, and the emitters are all different. That's the part that kind of acts like a transmitter, if you will, of the information in the frequency bands, and they're not all the same. There's so many different kinds of emitters, and I demonstrated the power and the effectiveness of my coils and my cubes and my double vortex and scalar level 1, scalar level 2, scalar level 3, and scalar level 4. And so now today we're going into frequencies. And my frequency library is so huge. And these are frequencies I've designed myself. And I designed them around the thesis. This is a very deep subject. It comes from the Bible in John 1, in the original Greek, which Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are Greek manuscripts. They're not written in English in the original copies, and they were not written in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. But in the Greek, John 1 gives us the true definition of God, which is logos. In the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God. But when you get into the deepest definitions of logos, you come to Pythagoras, and you see that logos is a vibration set up as frequencies that vibrate in proper ratio, and proper ratio of frequencies establishes a musical harmony. So the definition of John 1 is God is the musical harmony versus a disharmony, right? And so our nervous systems, because they're like an antenna. Your skeleton and your entire skeleton is made of calcium, trace minerals, and collagen. And the calcium is in about the 5th or 6th position of the best conductors of any metal in the world. So we are the metal in our bones, which is the calcium part, is actually electrically conductive. That means we are affected by frequency transmissions from the microwave towers, which is the cell phone and the internet data. We're affected by the wiring in our house, because all of it is radiating into the human electrical system, and therefore cooperatively having some impact or effect on us. And last time I also talked about how I got in an argument with a medical doctor who said that electromagnetic frequencies have no effect on the human health or condition. So therefore I said, well, if you take a control group and you put them underground and you get rid of all the electromagnetic frequencies from the sun, which is your 9 primary colors, and you strip them of that, and then you take away the frequency of the earth and you put them underground where they won't receive that, then you get rid of all the cosmic rays and all the natural frequencies in nature, which includes the sound of birds and wind, because those are all frequencies. And this medical doctor told me that frequencies have no effect on the human condition. And what happens to people who are sequestered and isolated away from frequencies is they become massively ill, suicidal, and actually physiologically start to fall apart. So therefore, we live on frequencies. When our sun rises every day, we get all of the octaves from the tetrahertz bands of each color coming all the way down in the octave scale system, all the way into the body. We are living logos frequency beings, again, which is the true definition of God in John 1. So I started to, I originally looked at all of Royal Rife's frequencies, and one thing I noticed is he doesn't use one frequency, right? He uses series of frequencies, and he only treated people for 10 minutes in a single treatment. And one of the reasons, like, think of your body and your 7 chakras like a xylophone, right? So you have a nice little gong, and you're going to ring each chakra like a musical instrument. In order for energy to move effectively through the 7 energy centers, which correspond to the endocrine system, all the glands in the body that are stationed near or at the location of these chakra points, that if we're going to move energy, if you play one sound, one frequency, no matter how profound that frequency is, for example, like 432, you're not going to create a wave of movement. And when you get into music, you get into arrangements of frequencies that are in harmonic ratios. And when we experience a harmony, which is more than one frequency, it's 2 or more. And remember, Jesus said, whenever 2 or more of you are gathered in my name, Jesus' real name is Logos, because that's in John 1. And the real, in Jesus' real name is the name of the Father, and the name of the Father is I am. The true meaning of the Tetragrammaton is I am. That I am, or I am that which comes into being through harmonics, proper ratio, and vibration, and established harmony. So it's harmonies that are keeping the planets in orbits and the stars lit. The whole universe has this grand symphonic series of harmonies. And we can actually mathematically identify series of frequencies that operate in natural systems and affect the body very, very nicely. In fact, I read this study, because this is one of the frequencies I have. When people get my devices, they get a huge frequency library. And when they come to it, they're like, oh my God, where do I start in here? And I actually read this study. There's a beautiful study done in university in South America on the frequencies of bees and flowers and the sweetness of the nectar of the flower, and how a flower's nectar becomes more sweet when the bees are humming their tune next to the flower. And in this study, they identified 3 major frequencies that the bees use, that they vibrate at, which is their logos connected to the cosmic logos. And when I looked at the numbers, I went, oh my God, those are frequencies I already have in my Great Pyramid music scale. In fact, they're right in the lower to middle range of the entire pyramid scale. They're the same numbers. And in this particular study, they did a test where they removed the bee from the flower, and they test the sweetness of the nectar of the flower before and after the experiment. And they induce the same frequencies the bees use, but without the bee, with a transmitter, right? So again, your pulsed electromagnetic therapy devices have a transmitter, an amplifier, and a frequency. the flowers sweetened up as if the bees were really there, but there were no bees. They did it artificially, which means there's no such thing as an artificial frequency. When you have a frequency, whether you're producing it electronically or not, it does the same job. I just thought that was so beautiful that the flowers sweetened up to a pulsed electromagnetic transmission of the same frequencies that the bees use. And there are 3 numbers. So because those numbers were already in my Great Pyramid scale of frequencies, I thought I'm just going to extract those 3 and put them in another folder called bees, because people won't understand that the Great Pyramid music scale, which is all mathematically calculated, I did the calculations myself on the 4 slightly uneven sides of the Great Pyramid. I take the speed of light divided by the wavelength, and I look at my numbers, and I go from the base of the pyramid, and I work my way up, and I see what my frequencies are, and then I scale it down by shifting octaves, a musical octave, and I create this whole Great Pyramid music scale, and then I look at the numbers, and I go, there's the bees right in there. So if the bees are right in there, where is everything else in nature, the dolphins and the whale sounds? And it turns out this is one of the first things I did when I came out with my Lightstream wands in about the year 2006 and 7 in Sedona, Arizona, with my jewelers. And we designed our first wands that were the emitter was pulsed tourmaline and real ruby gems, emitting the gem energy into the field. All we were using was the recording of the sound of the sun and the Great Pyramid music scale, and people were getting results everywhere who bought these things all over the world, and that's all I had. But I'm going to give you an overview now of some of the frequencies that I have. And again, each one of these folders has hundreds of frequencies within it. So I have the frequencies of the 9 planets. That means that based on the mathematical wavelength of light coming off of each planet, I develop a whole music scale for each one of the 9 planets. And even though before the arrival of microwave towers and cell phones, we were naturally getting the Venus frequencies and the Mercury frequencies and the Saturn frequencies, and each planet having both in astrology a negative and a positive aspect, we, at the speed of light, the wavelengths coming off of all these planets reach human consciousness every day. But because of the distortion of the thousands of satellites surrounding our planet, and the electricity in our houses and the microwave towers, which are enormous, those natural frequencies tend to get drowned out. And this has been proven in real testing. So each planet actually corresponds, to my astonishment, to one of the 5 major human brainwave frequency states. From deep delta to theta to alpha to beta to gamma and super gammas, the planets fit perfectly within one of those major brainwave state categories. And that cannot be a coincidence. It has to be a coincidence, meaning the planet frequencies coincide and support human brainwave activity. And that Earth, its primary frequency being, the Tesla Schumann resonance, 7.83 fundamental, is upper theta, which is where humans dream. We dream collectively at the frequency of our own planet. It's really remarkable. Again, coincidence. I don't call it a coincidence, because a coincidence tend to be looked at as negative, meaning it's not interesting because it's a coincidence. But when things coincide, it's a positive, meaning there's a purpose to that function, that we're very, very relaxed in our dreaming state, and we dream at the frequency of our own planet. So each planet, like Mars, is really alpha, and alpha waves in the brain are where our coherent focus comes from. And people who have ADD, attention deficit disorder, can really benefit from those numbers. Now, what a lot of pulse electromagnetic field companies do, and I've researched everyone I can get my hands on, is they come up with abject numbers, meaning numbers that have no origin in the universal frequency mathematic. And they just say, well, I'm going to give you a delta frequency of 3, just because 3 fits inside of delta. But yet 3 doesn't necessarily exist anywhere and may not be good for you, that just because it fits inside of the bandwidth of the delta part of the brain. So the next thing I did in addition to the planets is I looked at Fibonacci's sequential numbers that give us the golden ratio that is evident everywhere in nature. Is I created what's called golden ratio brainwave frequencies, which means when you go to golden ratio brainwave tuning, you have phi delta, phi theta, phi alpha, phi beta, phi meaning golden ratio, phi beta 2, because there's 2 sections of the beta in the gold. So I build the numbers inside of the brainwave categories into the range of the brain in those states, rather than giving it abject, meaningless numbers that actually don't establish themselves as a harmony, as a logos. Remember, a logos is a harmony based on proper ratio, and golden ratio is proper ratio. And again, I've looked at so many of these companies with PMF devices. They have no ratio. They give you one number at a time, and the number is totally abject, meaning it doesn't fit anywhere in nature or the cosmos. I'm really astonished that people do it, because I don't want somebody giving me a frequency that doesn't tune me into something that's real. It's actually real. So why is it that the Great Pyramid scale frequencies coincide with B frequencies that cause the pollination and the sweetening of the nectar of flowers? Probably because the wavelengths, wavelengths and frequencies are the same thing. They're expressed mathematically differently. So you can take the speed of light in any unit of measure, metric, meters, or miles, or feet, or Greek feet, or Roman feet, or Egyptian cubits. I can resolve the speed of light in Egyptian cubits. Now, the frequency number I'm going to get, regardless of my measurement of the speed of light, is always the same number. What's beautiful about frequency is it transcends mathematics. It doesn't care what unit of measure you use to calculate the frequency. The number is always the same, which means frequency is the universal language. I've done thousands of frequency calculations over the past 18 years, thousands myself. So when I come to a series and I open up a series, and I'll give you some titles of this enormous frequency library I've created. You have your 9 planet frequencies, and there are hundreds of frequencies in that file. Bible frequencies, which are Bible code frequencies that are in the Bible. Fibonacci's sequences and sequences, and Fibonacci's sequence is evident everywhere in nature, as well as the golden ratio that Fibonacci's sequence arrives at the end of the sequence. So they're very similar numbers, because Fibonacci's sequence leads us to the golden ratio, and then we also have golden ratio brainwave tuning, right? And I have Great Pyramid scale frequencies, and I have the holographic, meaning based on the 4 uneven sides of the Great Pyramid, creating a vortex around your house and your energy field, spinning all the way to the top. It's really, really wonderful. And then I'm just reading from my own frequency library here. The Holy of Holies scaled frequencies, which is the Holy of Holies is the integral temple that starts with Moses and the early Jews in their migration using a cubic tent of 10 by 10 by 10 cubits to house the Ark of the Covenant and the staff of Aaron and Moses and the 12 tribes and all of the sacred objects in the Jewish temple. And because the Jews didn't have a home, their Holy of Holies was a tent. And at the time of Solomon, the temple was built one octave, one musical octave higher, which is times two. So the Holy of Holies is then built at 20 by 20 by 20 cubits. And then the Holy of Holies has a temple called the Holy Place that extends beyond it as a rectangle of 10 by 20 cubits in the early days, and then it became 20 by 40 cubits in Solomon's temple. So what's interesting about the measurements of the Holy of Holies at the time of Moses is they're identical to the King and Queen's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, because the Queen's Chamber is 10 by 10 cubits, which is the measurement of the original Holy of Holies, and the King's Chamber is 10 by 20 cubits using the royal cubit, the most perfect cubit. And then we see why does the pyramid have two temples the same measurement as Moses, Holy of Holies, and the holy place at the time of Moses? Why is it exactly the same? And that's a real conundrum, a huge story, which I could spend a lot of time on. So my next folder is called infinities, and infinities are a mathematical description that the Greek mathematician Archimedes discovered, and they're ratios, therefore harmonies, logos, that have infinite expressions. For example, I could have a ratio of 1 to 1.25, and that's finite. That's a finite ratio. Or a ratio of 1 to 3 is a ratio that is finite. But the Ark of the Covenant, for example, is 1.5 cubits by 2.5 cubits. And that's a ratio of 1 to 1.66666. And the sixes go forever. So that's called an infinity. So why was the Ark of the Covenant in an infinite ratio of 1 to 1.6666? And then when you experience an infinity ratio of 1 to 6 with infinite sixes, you'll understand why the Ark of the Covenant secret is its ratio. And the ratio, again, is its logos. And the logos is the definition of God in John 1. So then we go to another folder called lymphatics activation. So these are frequencies that are good for the human lymphatic system. I have the pineal gland activator, which activates the light gland in the center of the brain. Then we come to another folder called polygonal geometries. And polygons are just that. They are sacred geometries. So these numbers converted to frequencies build all of the shapes and all of the geometries in nature, starting with the triangle numbers. Of course, pyramids are made out of triangles and squares. And your second set of frequencies are square numbers, which means all the numbers that create squares. And then pentagonal numbers, the pentagon. Hexagonal numbers, the hexagon is the basis of the flower of life. The heptagonal numbers, the 7. Octagonal numbers, the 8. Nonagonal numbers, the 9. Decagonal numbers, the 10. Hendecagonal numbers, the 11. Dodecagonal numbers, the 12. Tridecagonal numbers, the 13. And tetradecagonal numbers, the 14. And my calls are 14 points for a very, very profound reason. So so then we get to prime number frequencies. And prime numbers are any number divisible by themselves and the number 1. They're very, very profound frequencies. When I first started working with prime numbers, I started having time travel dreams. And I started seeing dreams of different histories of periods on the earth itself, on what was stationed here in certain locations. I was totally mind blown by the power of and why is that good? Because therapeutically, if you want to go back in time or into the future, you work with prime numbers. Because why would you want to go back in time? Because you may want to clear something therapeutically in your past that is still trapping you today. So, and again, each one of these folders, it takes months for a person to go through all these. I have a folder called right frequencies. I have some of the most profound right frequencies for the most common problems people have. And of course, I have solfeggio basics. Everybody seems to use solfeggio frequencies. Nobody knows for certain where they come from. They're very beautiful numbers. So we have solfeggio basics, solfeggio tones, and I also have Tesla frequencies. And remember, I was appointed director of the Los Angeles Tesla Foundation by an MIT PhD in physics. I have what's called the cube. The cube is probably some of the most advanced frequencies I ever created. And remember, the Holy of Holies is a cube, but the cube numbers are so incredible. They take a person's consciousness beyond what's called the binaural brain. Binaural means two, right? So if I give you two frequencies that are harmonically out of phase, and you have to be really careful with binaural numbers, because if they're not harmonically out of phase, they can really mess up your head. They can do things to you you don't want to mess with. So you don't want people making up binaural beats that are not mathematically calculated. The cube goes to binaural, trinaural, quadrinaural, pentanaural. It builds this huge holographic field around the brain, going way beyond just either or. Duality, the whole notion of how we fell in the Garden of Eden is we went into either or consciousness, which is a trap. Good and evil is a trick, right? Because if you take in good and evil, and I take in good and evil, and she takes in good and evil, and he takes in good and evil, and we all come together, we're going to disagree on either or. That's how we got into war and divorce and separation, and we lost unification consciousness, because what the purpose of going into duality was to begin differential awareness, which says there is no either or. There's this holographic point of view and there's this holographic point of view. And then when you add trinaural, quadrinaural, pentanaural, you start to see that everything has holographic awareness, and there is no such thing as choosing one side or the other, the right answer and the wrong answer. That whole philosophy of right and wrong answer and how we educate ourselves, and you hit the buzzer, you got the wrong answer, we electrocute you. Because if you get the wrong answer, we'll send an electric shock in your nervous system until you get the right answer. It's funny because there's a funny scene with Bill Murray in Ghostbusters. I was watching it with my daughter, where he was working with this psychic and this beautiful girl, and the beautiful girl was getting the wrong answers, and the guy he kept electrocuting when he got the wrong answers eventually became really psychic and got the right answer. But you see, holographic awareness is, and that's why God knew, if you take in this knowledge of good and evil, you're going to die, because you're going to take sides, and you never take sides. Have you gone into an argument with 100 people and taken sides? At least half of them are going to turn against you. And in fact, you can't say anything in an either or consciousness without a whole bunch of people coming down on you for what you said, because they're going to say what you said is wrong. My physics teacher said, you're wrong. And I think that's just hilarious. It makes me laugh, because once you understand, once you experience the cube, and you do the polygonal geometries, and you do both of them, your field is going to become holographic, and you're going to get it. There is no either or. There is no wrong answer, actually. Everything is holographic, meaning there's a right answer here, there's a right answer here, there's a right answer here, there's a right answer here. So what happens with more advanced, going beyond the dual-natured mind, which is the binaural brain, and you go to a trinaural brain, and then a quadrinaural brain, and a pentanaural brain, is you build nodes of awareness that are all looking into the situation from these different viewpoints, right? Like I remember this time I was with a girlfriend in Vancouver, Canada. We came out of a movie theater, and this kid had jumped off of the courthouse, crashed through the trees, and his head hit the concrete right in front of my feet. It sounded like a coconut hitting the ground. He died right in front of me. Police came, all these witnesses came forward, and the cop said, "Did anybody here see this happen?" And I said, we saw him die right in front of us. There was nobody here yet, but there were so many people screaming that they had seen it happen, and of course they didn't. They saw it from that. The cop never took my testimony because he had so many testimonies from so many different angles, and you know what? They were all correct because everybody had a different experience of how this kid jumped off the courthouse and hit his head and died. Well, only 2 nights later, because in those days I could actually see spiritual beings with my eyes open, he appeared to me. I saw him with my own eyes, and he told me it was an accident. I mean, he was drunk and he fell. So now we come to Trinity, which are the three most sacred numbers. The three most sacred numbers. And to tell you what the three most sacred numbers are in mathematics as frequencies in ratio, well, I'm not going to tell you right now. So now I'm going to go back to my main folder. And very recently, because there has been a lot of success using color frequencies for healing in combination with the color itself. And there's a wonderful book by Darius Dinshaw, a Persian mathematician and mystic, who was working with nurses in hospitals in the eastern United States, and they were curing all sorts of things with color and the frequencies of that color. And Darius only used 3 octaves of each color. So what you do is you start at the top and you go to your 9 colors and you measure. I had to find the highest absorption frequency for each of the primary colors: red, orange, yellow, lemon, um, uh, uh, turquoise, blue, indigo, and violet. And then when you get to the highest absorption, the peak frequency absorption, you divide it by 2, which are musical octaves, and you come all the way down. And when I got
Why do you always say yellow and lemon, David?
Because they're 2 separate colors in true color. Lemon is one of, and yellow are 2 separate colors in the 9 primary colors. They're not the same. So, and these primary colors build all in combinations, build the more exotic colors, like scarlet red is not a primary color; it's a combination color, right? So, so that's what I did. I came all the way down, and I looked, and I said, "Why did Darius Dinshaw only use 3 octaves? There are a total of 9 colors times 8 audible octaves gives me 72 colors. And there are 72 color frequencies in the audible spectrum. Jesus in the Gospel of Philip says that to throw 72 colors into a vat and the colors all came out white. How did he know that there were 72 colors amongst 8 octaves, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's 8 octaves of each frequency for each color would produce the number 72. And that Jesus's spine in the Shroud of Turin would measure at a tad over 72 inches. So the number 72, of course, times an octave is the 144. And the 144 is huge. It's huge. So not only did I come out with 8 audible octaves per color for people to work with in combination with the optical color, but I came out with what's called the rainbow beams, which means I have 9 beams that take you through each one of the rainbow colors in a beam. So I went way beyond what Darius Dinshaw started and other color therapists started. by expanding the scale. And in addition to that, I wanted to see where the Tesla Schumann resonance, the earth frequency, came in at. So when I went through all my colors and I came all the way down and I looked in the bandwidth of the Schumann resonance, green. So the earth is an octave of green. The grass is green,
Wow.
the trees are green. It proved to me that the math was perfect. And of course, green is heart chakra. And to my astonishment, also, when we did this experiment using these GDV aura cameras, when we gave people the sound of the sun, their heart chakra got huge and the other chakras shrunk down to deliver all the energy to the heart, which means the sun is the heart chakra, right? And we already know this. We already know the sun is the heart chakra. So therefore, the sun contains all the colors, but the earth is a primary love heart chakra frequency. So there you go. So then I have, okay, again, then I got what are called resurrection frequencies. This is a huge subject. Angelic realm portal frequencies, which is based on the music scale of the angels. The Ark of the Covenant frequencies. And again, Ark of the Covenant frequencies are based on the ratios of the Ark of the Covenant. And ratio is harmony. Frequency is not harmony. A single frequency is not a harmony. You need two or more in ratio logos to establish a harmony. So the Ark of the Covenant is huge. To get those frequencies in your body causes an activation. I have B frequencies. I have brainwave rainbow spectrum. So I've got three aspects of the rainbow and the color frequency. I have the frequencies of the rainbow spectrum that fit into each one of the five major brainwaves. You have no idea how much time it takes people to go through these. And when you get these frequencies in your body, you're getting activated by true logos frequencies, right? I have the frequencies of the chakras. I have chakra color energy octaves. I have chakra pure color tones. I have the color 72 music scale. I have oh my god, I've got so many rainbow frequencies to work with. The flower of life frequencies took me years. This is another folder called Flower of Life. I didn't want to just make up numbers and call them Flower of Life. I had to find out what is the ratio of the Flower of Life. What creates the Flower of Life is all based on the ratio between the diameter of two circles as they cross their midsections. There's this mathematical formula that gives us the ratio of the diameter of the two circles that form a flower petal in the Flower of Life to the diameter of the flower petal in the Flower of Life. And once you have that ratio, you can generate Flower of Life frequencies. And so I have those. Nobody else in the world has these, by the way. So the library is just huge. I mean, it's really enormous, and I'm only able to give you a brief summary of what these are. I have what are called God's building blocks, and these are the numbers that build everything, and I mean everything. And they sound like blocks that, I mean, they're really good for breaking up stagnant energy and opening up all the energy blocks that are in our blocks. I have the holographic pyramid, and I have the hydrogen frequencies, which we start at the actual frequency of hydrogen itself, which is the most abundant element in the universe. And of course, water is H2O, which means 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, which means hydrogen frequencies are good for hydration. And guess what doesn't like well hydrated cells? Cancer. So theoretically, you could say that hydrogen frequencies could be beneficial there. But again, I can't make any medical claim legally, so I can't tell you what I really know, but yet it makes a lot of sense to a logical person. I have Jesus frequencies, and these Jesus' frequencies are based on the ratio of where he was born on the earth, where he was baptized on the earth, and where he was resurrected on the earth. I have the King's Chamber coffer resurrection frequencies that are all based on the mathematical ratios of the King's Chamber coffer. I have what's called logos frequencies. I have I have what's I'm just going through here because I don't want to. Some of these are nuances of, like, I have planet portals, and planet portals is new. It's when I create a ratio, like the ratio between Earth and Venus in the number of days per year is 1 to the golden ratio, almost perfectly. It's a Fibonacci 813 ratio. So if I establish Earth frequency and Venus frequency together in ratio, I create a connection or portal between the two planets. So therefore, your astral form can connect with any planet you want using Earth and the other planet frequencies. So I have the pyramid music scale, tone ups and tone downs. I have royal qubit frequencies, which are based on the most perfect royal qubit. Stargate frequencies, which are based on the known radius of stars like Sirius and Alpha Centauri and Pegasus. I mean, almost Pleiades, almost any star system you can think of. We have a music scale of frequencies of about 15 tones per star. So that means you can go into a star beam if you want to connect with a distant star system. I have the temple scroll frequencies, and the temple scroll was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Why do I use religious frequencies? Because religious frequencies are logos. They're designed by the master harmonizer of the universe. And when you experience them, people say, well, what will that do for me if I do those frequencies? What I say to them is they were designed by God. They're biblical. Do them and you'll see.
So were you.
And so were you, right? So when you do them, you'll know. Can I tell you they're going to do the same thing to everybody? You know what's interesting about that question? Will a frequency do the same thing to two different people? Well, first of all, your voice only exists in one person out of 8 billion people. There's no two voices that are identical, which means your frequency code, your harmonics, your voice is not just one frequency, by the way, it's a whole band of frequencies, is unique and proprietary to you. So what a frequency will do to you will be you. It won't be anybody else, because no two people will experience the logos exactly the same, because we're unique. So you will experience a deeper level of you when you do these frequencies. And wouldn't you want to experience a deeper level of you? I know I would. So we have, I mean, the Washington Monument tuner frequencies. We have frequencies of the Egyptian obelisk, and there's some at different measurements. I mean, this really goes on and on and on. And then, of course, your traditional rife frequencies for experimenting on different issues, I could say, can run through any of my systems, and therefore you can use those numbers, and people have gotten tremendous results with those numbers. And why does one number, which is a frequency, do this, and another number can actually cause you some problems? And that's because the profundity of very specific frequency numbers, it's just like music. Let's say you have a piano totally out of tune, and I get my frequency meter, all those out of tune piano keys will produce a number. Why is it that number your body doesn't like it? Why? Can't explain it. But then if I tune the piano correctly, you will like it. That's another number when I look at my frequency meter. So that's why we don't want to put frequencies in our nervous system that are not designed in proper ratio proportion. There's a lot of people out there just making up numbers and running them through the body. Like I said, I can go through all these PMF devices and I say, okay, what frequencies do you offer people? Most of them have a tiny library, by the way. And then when I see numbers like 4, 3 hertz, I'm like, what are you doing? Why would you want to put an abject, meaningless number in your body just because the person who made this PMF device doesn't know what to give you? I don't want some meaningless number going in me. So a few of these PMF companies have finally given people the Tesla Schumann resonance. Wow, they finally gave you one frequency that's interesting. But I can tell you that most of them don't have any interesting frequencies at all, to tell you the truth. It's really sad when I look at the numbers. Like I had a guy, met him at a conference, and these were the amethyst beds. And he said, we pulse the amethyst beds at 10 hertz. And I said, well, why 10 hertz? Why didn't you do something more interesting than 10 hertz? And he said, because 10 hertz produces a lot of heat and it works. I'm like, okay. I don't know why anybody would want 10 hertz, but nevertheless, they sold a lot of those amethyst beds and people got 10 hertz. I don't see it anywhere. I don't see 10 hertz and in thousands of calculations. I don't see it anywhere in nature. But he decided to use 10 hertz and he sold tons of beds. So frequency is in harmony is logos. Logos is the definition of God in John 1. Then we really have to look at what are natural harmonies versus unnatural harmonies, and why is one frequency beneficial and another one not. So what I tell people to do when you get one of my devices and you look at what are your goals, and we know what your goals are, we can tell you where to start. You don't want to speed around and do all the frequencies in 1 month. Because you'll drive yourself crazy. You want to spend quality time with a certain group of frequencies until you have an experience or your desired result. Then you try another one. Look, you've got your whole life to do this. You don't. It's like trying to going into a library and try to read every single book, or like the Matrix. You suddenly Neo knows how to fly a helicopter in 30 seconds. Frequencies are very, very powerful. We're around them all the time. And in a natural world, without any electricity, if we had designed electricity to be a harmonic, we'd have a whole other experience interfacing with technology. Because why can a bee produce a frequency that sweetens the nectar of a flower? And why can we artificially produce the same frequency and the flower responds positively? Why? Because
Time is 618, by the way.
I know it's 618. I was just looking at the time myself, which is 1.618, which is the golden ratio. And remember, you see, once you study nature's numbers and the cosmos numbers, you know what they are. I've been doing this for 18 years. And it's taken me every year, I come up with more frequencies and more frequencies for people to enjoy, right? And the way I look at it is our music scale is one scale of nearly perfect frequencies, but how many scales in the universe are there that are perfect? Why do we just use this one set of frequencies in all of our music?
I think about frequencies of music for the body versus music for the ears, kind of thing.
Well, exactly, but it's both because your brain picks up all the frequencies that are going on all around it. In fact, Luc Montagnier, who died recently, was one of the Nobel Prize winners that shared the prize allegedly for the discovery of the AIDS virus. He went rogue, turned against the medical establishment because he found in real living experiments that human DNA responded to frequencies. Oh my God, you can't say that, Luke, to the medical community, because the medical community doesn't believe the frequencies have any role in human health. Yet, if you remove all the frequencies from a human organism, it will die. So I don't know why they're so stuck. Probably because they want to be in control of everything. I don't know why they're not interested. I've had people use my systems, completely turn around, and the doctor says, "What did you do?" Well, I use this device. And then they're like, "Well, that's great. I'm glad you're feeling better. See you later." Not interested in learning about it, by the way. I'm just glad you're better and see you later. So it's kind of frustrating, but we're.
Do you want to take some questions, David?
Oh yeah, are there any questions?
Well, this one's kind of personal. David, wondering why you ever stopped talking about UFOs.
I never stopped talking about UFOs. I've got tons of interviews I've done recently on UFOs. I've been on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie on UFOs since the U.S. Navy pilot testimony. I don't speak at conferences anymore because I'm a single parent raising two girls, a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old. I can't take my kids to these things. It's too much work. But I do a lot of appearances on that subject. Absolutely.
What frequencies are used in the DNA activation service when you send in a hair sample?
Well, I rotate the frequencies all the time. So they're all frequencies, but they're very high frequencies. So they're in the megahertz spectrum. So they're the kind of frequencies that come off the wand in the staff, but I don't use a wand or a staff to activate the DNA. So I'm rotating them all the time. They're all very, very beneficial.
Is there a good documentary for the Shroud of Turin?
There's some really good books, but there's some. I really went into the Shroud of Turin very, very deeply, and it's. I made a film with my late wife, Crystal. It's on Guy TV. It's called Mona Lisa's Little Secret, and you have to watch that film and read the book to go really deep into the Shroud. I used a lot of incredible data on the Shroud of Turin, and in that film. So you just go to Guy TV and look for Mona Lisa's Little Secret.
Are you familiar with the Sophia Codex?
Oh yeah, I've read.
You've talked about it too, haven't you?
It's in my Gnostic, scriptures. I've studied the Gnostic scriptures and the Sophia Codex and the Sophia of Christ and the Sophia.
Sophia.
Pistis Sophia. There's a number of manuscripts that refer to Sophia and the role of Sophia. Sophia means wisdom in Greek, but it's feminine. It's feminine wisdom. Will the geometric shape of the planets are forming out in the solar system create new frequencies on the Earth? Frequencies are changing all the time because our whole solar system is migrating around the Milky Way galaxy. So we're in a new position in space every single day. And it takes 250 million years to orbit the Milky Way galaxy, somewhere thereabout. It's more than that, but it's.
Is there a frequency to help induce a pregnancy?
This is really interesting question because I had 2 clients who could not get pregnant for the life of them. They used the wand, and both of them got pregnant and had multiple children. Now, can I say that medically that every person who does these frequencies will get pregnant who can't? No, I can't say that because the medical institution won't allow me to say that yet. I find it really amazing how happy these people were that they used my frequencies and they got pregnant. And not only that, my children, when they were in the womb during the 9-month cycle, we transmitted frequencies into the womb, and both children were so musical with their voices and had so much tonal range in their dialoguing and so many different octaves of happiness expression ever since they were born. So I really attribute that to children in the womb are so receptive to frequencies. it's the best time to program them with music scales because they're so receptive at the weakest level. Like, you don't have to turn the devices up to full power around the womb. You turn it way down, like 30% volume on the power supply, and the children and the mother really seem like, we even did tests with autistic children, and some of these tests, the autistic child could tell you, I like those frequencies and I don't like those ones. It was incredible because you can't hear anything, but they could feel it and they could say, I like that one. I thought that was incredible.
I think that's it.
So anyway, there's obviously, everybody should know, there's replays of all these talks I've given.
Yeah.
So you can share the replay with your friends. It's on my YouTube channel. It gets archived there. Would you do a show on UFO and entities or something? I've done so many shows recently on UFOs. They're all over the place out there. I've had so many people interview me about the UFOs. But to do the UFO,
I'll send you links. Why don't you text me at 778-386-1786, and I'll send you links of interviews.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of them. I've been on Coast to Coast AM a couple of times in the last few years. I've been on Carrie Cassidy on Project Camelot. I've been on Rex's show. What's it called? What's his show called, Shroth?
Rex's
Rex Bear show. I've been there's so many of them that I've done even recently.
And Coast to Coast.
I'm really following this particular story. Right? Actually, there's one interview on my channel.
Did you hear what he says? It's actually hard to find your videos, like you're being silenced.
Well, yeah, we know who's doing that. I mean, I'm being blocked everywhere by my marketing competitors. It's so let me go to my YouTube channel right now. Here's a really good if you saw the movie was called Terror in the Sky. I interviewed David Mason from
Leak Project. That's it. Leak Project. Thanks, Kenneth.
Yeah, Rex Bear is the Leak Project. So I've done a lot of interviews there on the UFOs. Okay, here's me with David Mason. On David Mason, I mean, this has only got 491 views. We did this a little while ago. I'll just put it here in the chat. Where can I put in the chat, Rose? How can I?
You can just put it in the same chat.
But there's nowhere to put it.
Oh, go to comments and then just put it there.
Oh, okay.
If you don't have comments, you can put it in the private chat and I'll put it in.
I'll put it in the private chat. I don't seem to be able to put in. This is an interview with myself and David Mason on. You really need to see the film Terror in the Sky, but also watch that interview I did with David Mason. He's an incredibly profound.
I'll also show it on the screen for you. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, I have to get back to my kids. Thank you for being here, and please go to my YouTube channel to see all of these are archived, and please share them as much as you can.
And call me if you have any questions about any of David's products. I can help.
Thank you.
Bye, David. Bye, everyone. You're welcome. Don't hesitate to call or email or text. Bye for now.